Today's guest is Jill Ong. Jill is a marketing and brand leader with more than 25 years of experience helping shape some of the world's most recognizable brands, including Converse, Beats by Dre, Sonos. Throughout her career, she's led teams across Asia and North America and helped brands expand into new markets, launched campaigns at global scale, and built organizations from the ground up. Today, Jill serves as the managing director at Wigz, where she's helping build something new at the intersection of culture, creativity, fashion, sports, and technology. Jill, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on here. Thanks for having me.
So, you have spent years helping brands earn cultural relevance rather than just attention. What's a signal you look for that tells you a brand has genuinely become part of culture, not just part of someone's media plan?
Good question. I think the best example I would use for that is my years working on Converse. I think I'll paint a good example for you. We did this
Okay.
major campaign that was called Made by You, and it was the first global brand campaign that Converse had done. And what we did was that we went out and shot people's used chucks, like people's owned chucks, which Converse had never done before. It was a first for them. So even convincing them, like they always shoot chucks clean. So to convince them to even go, hey, we want to photograph people's chucks that they've worn for 10 years was mind blowing for them, right? And we convinced them to do it, and we collected like hundreds of chucks from all over the world, and it was chucks that belong to regular people like you and I, but also like celebrities. We even shot Andy Warhol's chucks. We traveled all the way to Pittsburgh to the Andy Warhol Museum and shot it right there because you can't take it out of the museum. But what was really, and this is the sign of it, right? What was really unique about it was we made it look like an art exhibition. So we had rules for like media buy where you could only buy units of at least three in a row. We took over, like, for instance, like, in Hong Kong, in their subway, like they have long kind of tunnels, and we took over like the whole tunnel. So it was as if you were walking through like an art museum, right?
No.
So and each one was signed by the owner, and they were like such beautiful chucks that really represented who you are as a person. What really made it like a part of culture rather than like it being forced was that we had celebrities knocking on our doors asking whether they could be a part of it. They were like, this is dope, this is like so cool, can I submit my own chuck? So we had chucks from like Patti Smith, like from like Futura, like all these famous people, and people hitting us up wanting to be a part of that campaign. And I remember when we released the campaign, there was talk about, hey, should we create like an app or like a mechanic where people can kind of upload their own portraits, with the signature and everything. And we decided, you know what, we're not going to do that because that just feels so forced from a brand perspective. And we want people, if they want to do it themselves. And so we had all these really janky portraits that people were doing but posting on social media. And I think that that is, to me, like that is a sign when your campaign has transcended culture, where people want to be a part of it without you trying to force it down their throats. And I think that that came from like an insight, right? That your chucks are not just a pair of shoes. Like, it could be bedazzled, you could write on it, it could be the dirtiest pair of shoes, but it holds all these memories of moments that you've been through or what you believe in. Like, people painting on that, like the pride flag, whatever it is. Like it became a representation of who they are, you know what I mean? And I think that came from the inside of, this is a blank canvas for you to kind of show who you are. The other thing that was so unique about it too. And I've worked in many global markets, okay, where for instance, China, and I've worked in China. China is the first one to put up their hands and go, "This doesn't work in our market. People don't understand." But for the first time, we had people from every market, including China, wanting to be a part of this campaign. And we even did portraits for all the employees, like, and so we had so many portraits, and we did a launch on the same day. So it launched, I believe, in like over 40 markets on the same day, which was also a first for Converse. So that was a long way of saying like it has to come from a true insight, but you kind of have to also you have to put the brand kind of the essence of the brand in it. Obviously, this is something that was true to Converse, right? Converse has been around for a long time, has been a part of culture. So we honored that by not forcing it down people's throats and by making a campaign that resonated with everyone.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. I want to look up this campaign right now. I can just imagine like all the stories that lie behind every pair of chalks. Like, talk about like connection to humanity, no matter where you are in the world. Of course, it resonated in over 40 markets. Like, just
Yeah,
looking at a pair of.
definitely check it out. Yeah, like there's like a film that goes with it, and we even did, and this was
Mhm.
like years ago. Okay, we even did like a VR experience with like
Whoa.
this box thing that Google has, so it's on your phone, but we created stories as if you were in the chucks of like those characters.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's such a cool story and a great example. And I'm curious because you've had this fascinating path. You've worked in Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, New York. I'm curious what's something you learned about storytelling in Asia that most Western marketers still like underestimate.
I think that the mistake sometimes global has is that they think that the West is the beacon of like whatever holds
Mhm.
here is going to translate to other markets. And I'm not saying that it doesn't. Sometimes it does, certain trends do. For example, like for China, back when I worked there, now actually it's changed, right? Where China is its own thing. Like it's no longer like China trying to adapt campaigns. China creates campaigns on its own now. So it's no longer the same model that we had before where it's global adaptation of a campaign. And I think for China specifically, it was such a unique market in terms of like the economy, how they were doing, the trends that were popping up over there. And I think like the sense of like the consumer there is so different from here, for instance, right? Like we did like the campaign for I worked on Adidas like during the Beijing Olympics, and we did this campaign that was athletes like in motion, so like a basketball player, and that was in color, but underneath the basketball player you see like a sea of like people lifting that person up, and that was all pencil drawings, right? And that came from a very specific insight to the Chinese consumer, where your like win and your kind of achievement as an athlete representing our nation is the pride of us all, and we couldn't do it without everyone. So there are very different kind of ways of thinking, like, and me being like Chinese as well, like I definitely got the nuances of certain things like working there that sometimes like the your Western counterpart just misses,
Mhm.
like simple things like our last name is not really our last name, it's our first name, right? As in we put our family name first in our name. So even that is like a very interesting kind of fact that shows how much we value like our ancestors and stuff. So just that's a roundabout way of me saying like it is very different, just like based on where you are and the kind of values that you grow up with.
Oh, okay. That's fascinating. I think that's fascinating. And I think you must have learned so many things, that like your perspective is so unique because of where you come from. And like, I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I've had like the good fortune of being on both sides of it. I've worked from a global perspective, and then I've
Hmm.
also worked in a local market. So I think
Yeah.
that I started working in the local market first before I came to like New York and started working on like global campaigns. And I think that that experience definitely lent well to me understanding what local markets needed,
Hmm.
and being able to be empathetic instead of just like, oh, anytime like China comes and wants to do this and people are like, but like for me, like I understood where they were coming from, but it also allowed me to shut down certain things which I felt like you're just saying that because you want to say that. So I really value like how I've had different experiences on both sides of the fence.
I love that perspective.
Hmm.
And many brands talk about community as if it can be built through content alone. What's something you've learned about creating belonging that goes far beyond campaigns and communications?
I think that these days it's so different now for
Hmm.
brands, right? Like brand
Yeah.
building is very different in 2026 than it was in 2006.
Yes.
Like we brands have to be more culturally driven. Consumers trust people more than they trust brands now. We're much savvier as consumers. So it's no surprise that you see like a rise of like the creator economy, right? Like where influencers, creators, athletes, like celebrities. I mean, celebrities have always been a part of advertising, but the way that they're used now are it has evolved, right? Because you know you have to stand for something, but people are like way more wary of like what you stand for, and you actually need to bring in like all these people I'm talking about, like influencers and creators, to help tell your story, to and it shouldn't just be a one-way street where they're just doing stuff for you. Like I think the best kind of partnerships work because there is a genuine alignment and not just because they're transactional, right?
Yeah.
So we did like an activation recently at Wigz for Puma that was for Christian Pulisic, and it was about sending him off to the World Cup, and it was also the launch of this soccer boot that he developed with Kid Super. So Puma has like a long-standing relationship with both Kid Super and Christian Pulisic, and I think that that really works for them because of like the cultural credibility that Kid Super has around him. But then Puma is also giving him the space to kind of experiment and do interesting stuff. Like we knew that Kid Super is a big soccer fan. Like he's played soccer since like he was a kid. So it felt like a perfect match for them to bring him together with Christian Pulisic to create this boot that he's been wearing in matches if you're following the World Cup.
Yeah.
But so that's what I'm saying. Like it's really about not just paying someone to like post something about your brand and say something about your brand. I'm not saying that brands don't do that. Brands still do that, but are they successful? Like is it money well spent doing that? I'm not so sure. I think that in order to actually create long lasting impact, you need to really kind of find the right fit, and not just for it to be like a one off. Like you need to like build like a partnership that actually
Yeah.
spans years, right? And find ways of working together that actually brings out the values of the brand that then coincides with like the values of like these influencers or creators. So it's really about, it's no longer about, oh, brands like interrupt culture. That was what it used to be. Now the best brands participate in it.
Yes. Yes. I hadn't thought about it through that lens.
Mhm.
And Throughout your career, you've helped shape some of the world's most recognizable brands, like I mentioned. Brands that people are already had a relationship with before they ever saw a campaign, you know? But now you're building in a much earlier chapter. So how do you approach creating meaning when the story is still being written?
I think it boils back to the same thing, right? I think like culture is really about being a part of culture, and culture moves so quickly now that you really have to pick and choose your battles, right? You really have to choose when are the right moments to engage in something. So as you're building your brand, I think knowing at the core what you stand for and then building upon that, I think that that's important. But then don't forget that culture also moves so fast now that you need to kind of be a part of it. And if you hesitate, that moment is gone. So I think like as long as like you're rooted in like this is who we are and this is what we stand for and these are the people that we're going to work with, and these are the deal breakers that we stand by. I think like you need to have that at the core of it so that when opportunities come up in terms of like things happening in culture, you can activate against it much faster, and because it is a fit with what you believe in, you know.
Yeah, yes. And Wigz sits at the intersection of fashion, art, sports, culture, technology. What excites you most about building a brand in a moment when those worlds are starting to blur together?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I've worked in many agencies. Like I've worked in like the biggest agencies, and I've worked in like agencies that have been acquired. And Wix is probably the smallest place that I've worked with, but that makes it super exciting. You know,
Mhm.
there's like eight of us, and we're building something that is, as you said, at the intersection of sports, of fashion, of music, of culture, and being small enables us to be really nimble about doing things. I think like we are quite choiceful about what we want to work on, and I think that, you know, and I'm sure a lot of founders of agencies will say that, like, and with Wix, you know, Wix has been around for like, you know, over 5 years. I only joined the team this year, but you know, both Nathan and Raquel, who are the founders, like, they have always had a very clear vision of the kind of work that they want to produce,
Yes.
right? So the work is really at the core of it, and the kind of like work that we want to do, the kind of clients that we want to work with. So it's not so much about we only want to work with the coolest brands. I mean, that helps, you know what I mean? But I think that the what we're looking for are like brands who have ambition and want to do exciting things, and is able to move fast with culture. And I think being small helps us to do that. And you know, as I said, like things are moving so fast in culture now. Like what's really exciting too is that us being small, what, you know, everyone's talking about AI these days, right? And we definitely do use AI, but not in a way that like bigger agencies use it. Like in bigger agencies, it's all about let's use AI to replace people, let's use AI to cut costs.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
for us, it's really about using AI to kind of work better. So, you know, even internal kind of processes, like we use AI to do things that make the process more efficient. And because we're small and sometimes we're working on activations where there's 10,000 elements and it's hard to keep track of everything, we're using AI to kind of help streamline our process. That's one part of it. The other part of it is that we're not using AI to replace a creative person. We're actually using it to enhance the output, which when I joined, like that was like a big thing for me that I really liked and valued at Wigz, you know. Obviously AI is still in its early stages and we're still trying to understand how we're using it. But I really love at Wix what we're doing is that we're using it to, you know, make things better, to do things that in another timeline, like you could never have done it or with a different budget. And so it really allows us to move at speed. But at the end of the day, what's important is this, okay? You can use technology to accelerate the process, but you still need to have taste to create the work.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
think that that's key with us, where I'm not just like doing something and it's like, okay, AI does it and it's fine. Like it still has to be tasteful, and we still have to be the ones kind of having that eye on like what it is and how AI can help, right? So it's not about choosing between speed and quality. It's about finding systems that allow both.
Yes. I once had a guest that said a quote that I love, that we are the chefs and AI is the sous chef.
Totally. That is totally right. And I don't think a lot of people see it that way. I think they see it as like
Unfortunately.
they see it as the way to save money, like they don't even look at it in that way. They see it as a way of like cutting costs so that we can make better profit margins. And at Wix, like that's not really the case for us. I think we really use it very choicefully to make the work better, or to make work that we couldn't have made using like budgets that we were given like 10 years ago. I mean, it's really pretty amazing the things that you can do now. But everyone's figuring it out. I'm not saying that we are the foremost experts of it, but I think that we are being very considered when we use
Mhm.
these tools.
Yes, and then very intentional it feels. Like it Wigs looks like a perfect, like a really amazing place to work in. Like a
it,
very great
it
culture.
is. It is. Everyone's very like we do a like because this year is the year of the World
Yes.
Cup. We've done a lot of activations related to the World Cup, and I can tell you that Nathan and the creative team, they are like fully locked in, right? So a lot of our work is born from like very kind of a good understanding of like the
Mhm.
category that we're talking about.
Yes.
Um, I think it's also unique is that there's no ego at
Yes.
Wix, and in advertising that's a rarity, and it's really like we put the work at the core of it, but at the end of the day it's also about the people. And I
Yes.
think that's for me the reason that I'm still in this industry, because I really care about nurturing people. And I've been very lucky. A lot of the friends that I have now are people that I met through my line of work, and they become like really great friends. And it's because you meet like-minded people
Yes.
in the industry. And so for me, it saddens me to see the economy like forcing companies to like shrink and get rid of people, and that's just like a sad thing, which I get like kind of comes with like as times change. But for us, we value our talent, and we make sure that we treat our people well, that we are nurturing people, and that word, it feels like a family. And I know that's so cliched, and like the last time I felt this was with my Converse team, where we were really like a family, and I haven't felt that way in a long time until I joined Wix.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. That's lovely. I'm so happy for you that you're there.
Thank you.
And you have lived and worked across some of the world's most influential markets. I'm
Mhm.
curious, like, what's a belief you once had about consumers that experience eventually changed?
Mm. Um, I think working in different markets, like, and over time, like, I don't know if it's so much about the market as it is over time. Consumers are smarter than you think they are,
Yeah.
right? Like, you used to market to people and kind of just think that people will buy what you're selling.
Mhm.
And these days,
That has evolved now.
consumers call you out for stuff,
Mhm.
okay? And like everyone's trying to jump on the bandwagon of something, when pride was the thing, LGBTQ, and everyone's trying to jump on it, or like sustainability, everyone's trying to jump on it. Like even the most recent, like, Knicks obviously taking over everything in New York, which was a really wonderful moment. You can see all these brands like trying to jump on it, and some I think that they've done well in I think the best moments that I've seen are when brands react to things in a way that is authentic, right? You've seen this in social media a lot, especially like, on Twitter, where brands respond to things like in the past, like if there was whatever thing that happened was considered a crisis. Now the savvy brands are using that moment to be a part of the
Yeah.
conversation and to make it a joke and to like just ride on it. And to me that is smart, right? Because that is what consumers look at and go, oh, this brand doesn't take itself too seriously, and I like
Yes.
that. Right, I think it's the brands that really take themselves like way too seriously sometimes that run into the issue of people just going like chill out. And so I think that that's really what brands need to take note of. Like I remember like seeing this thing on social media during like the Knicks parade, of like Convene, which was I guess like a co-working space. I didn't even know this co-working space brand. And I guess like Knicks fans had started dismantling like the logo and taking down alphabets, and they took down the N because there's an N in Knicks. And that could have been the end of that story, right? But then like Convene kind of jumped on it and basically like started like being a part of the conversation, saying like, oh yeah, like totally like get why you guys did that. Like, oh my god, like we're a part of history now. So it's really about flipping that conversation. And these days, like consumers look at that as authenticity instead of like it being so polished all the time, right?
Yeah.
That's the key thing. It's like the whole polish, like this is our brand and this is like, you know, the 60-second spot we're gonna do in Super Bowl. Like all that's like fine. Like you're spending like what, 5 to 10 million doing that, when building a brand and authenticity with consumers is a daily endeavor where you're doing these things. And so you might think like, oh, it's about the big brand campaign. Sure, but it's really about like the daily kind of interactions that you have with consumers that show who you are as a brand.
Oh, yes, that's going to stick with me. I had never thought about it that way. Oh my God, you just gave me a lot to think about.
I mean, I had never even thought about it like until you posed a question to me, but I really believe strongly in that like I mean that's why budgets are changing these days, right? Like you don't get the kind of marketing budgets that you used to have.
Yes.
You used to have like millions of dollars, and now clients are coming with smaller budgets but bigger expectations, and that's a challenge, right? So you really have to be thinking in terms of like what can we do that will resonate with consumers in a way that doesn't feel like you're just trying to sell something to them, that you
Mhm.
actually stand for more than what you're trying to sell. And that's why I say it's all about consistency. It's all about who you are and how you bring it every day in in all the different connection points that you have with your consumers.
Wow, absolutely. That's one of my favorite answers I've heard on that topic. That's incredibly insightful, Jill. And after 25 years helping brands evolve, what's a question you're asking about brand building today that you weren't asking 5 years ago?
I think a lot of like the brands that have been around for a long time,
Hmm.
how do you stay relevant? How do you stay relevant with all the competition that's
Yes.
coming? And how do you leverage your legacy or your heritage, but not in a way that turns people off? Like you're talking about all like your big brands out there, right? Your Nikes, your McDonald's, like all these brands that have been a part of like your life for a long time, and hopefully like for the next 50 years. But it'll be interesting to see how these brands evolve with the consumer, with the climate, with culture and what's happening around us. Like, will the Super Bowl always be a thing? I really question that, right? It's like how many more brands are willing to pay 5-10 million for 60 seconds?
It's
And
crazy.
now, I mean, I'll tell you what annoys me is that it's not even that you watch the Super Bowl and that's when you see the ads anymore. Everyone's trying to leverage by like launching the ad a teaser 2 weeks before, or launching the ad like a week before, and all that kind of stuff drives me insane, because I'm like, it's not even about protecting that moment anymore and making consumers excited to go like, oh, I wonder what ads are gonna be in the Super Bowl, right? And maybe I'm a cynic. Like I definitely used to enjoy Super Bowl commercial breaks like 10 years ago more than I do now,
I agree.
because there was so much more creativity in it. And look, the days of like agonizing over every single bit of craft, like those days are gone, right? Like when you get to spend 6 months doing it and like throwing money at it. I'm not saying that craft isn't important, it is important, but it's about balancing like craft with what you're saying and how fast you're moving.
Yes, absolutely. That's, I think a lot of people need to hear that. That is a very valuable perspective. To end this episode, I want to end it with a round of 5 questions, like fast five. I'm gonna
Oh, okay.
give you some questions, and
I'm scared. I'm scared.
you're just gonna answer the first thing that comes to mind. Okay.
Okay.
So you can spend one day inside the marketing team of any brand in history. Which brand are you choosing?
Oh my God. A marketing brand. Oh. I'm sorry, I know I'm supposed to just say it, but it's really hard because I've worked with a lot of brands that I really respect. And so to me, that's not, you know what? I would love to go inside the brand of something that is totally unfamiliar to me, like a TGI Fridays, for instance, and go,
Okay.
what are you guys talking about? How are you guys improving things? How are you guys moving with the times? And what kind of decisions are you guys going to make yourselves relevant
I
in this
love
day
that
and age?
answer. I love that answer.
So it's not about the cool brands, because I've worked on all those cool brands. So I know how those corporations work. I kind of want to go where I've never been before.
I love that. That's a fantastic answer. And I think that it says so much about you. I love
Yeah.
it.
I think I
Okay.
also have a soft spot for TGI Fridays because, like, in Singapore, when we grew up, that was like a bougie restaurant for us.
Okay. Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, or New York? Which one are you choosing?
Oh, New York, hands down. I mean, I've lived here for over 16 years now, and not to diss all these other places. Every place has been fantastic, and I'm a Gemini, so I get bored very
Oh,
easily.
okay.
And like Singapore is where I grew up, and I lived in Hong Kong for 2 years, and then Shanghai for 3 years. And New York, I've been here for 16 years. I've had opportunities to move to LA, or to move back to Singapore, or to move to London. And I have always found it hard to pull that trigger because I really love New York. And like, there's no other place like it. And I consider this home.
I love that. And I love that you're a Gemini. I love the idea of a Gemini thriving in New York. Like you need the stimulation, the mental stimulation, and like
Exactly.
more city than New York to
Exactly.
give.
Hey, it's the time for Geminis to shine, because Geminis always have such a bad rep for being two faced and all this. But I'm like, no, we're just like outgoing people whose brains move at like 100 times the speed of
Yes.
other people, and like, so I'm all about putting the Gemini energy out there.
I love that. I love that. Okay. What's a skill you've always wanted to learn?
Uh, it's a tough one. I won't say that it's a skill that I want to learn. It's something that I know how to do, but I haven't had the chance to really use it. Okay,
Okay.
driving.
Okay,
I know
okay.
it sounds so. I have my driver's license. I learned it in Singapore. I took the manual test, and then I came to New York and I took like everything, so I can drive automatic, or I'm not even sure I can drive the manual anymore. But I've never really living in New York. You don't have a chance to really like
It's
drive. Like
impossible.
there's no reason for me to rent a car and like go anywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And what is a brand that feels timeless to you?
I want to say it's the brand like Tiffany's,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it's done a good job in terms of just like what it represents,
Absolutely.
keeping itself modern. And it's a brand that like I wanted to have like jewelry from Tiffany's 20 years ago. And now I still have some pieces where I wear and I still feel like it's it's a timeless brand, like it's a brand that I can see in 20 years time still has the same silhouettes and still manages to stay relevant.
Yes, great answer. Jill, thank you so much for joining me today. I think you've spent your career moving between creativity, business, cultures, leadership without like treating them as separate disciplines. And there's a thoughtfulness to the way you approach brand building, but also like a real curiosity about people, which is, I think, a big part of why your work has remained relevant across so many different markets and moments. So thank you for sharing your experiences, your perspective, and your generosity with us today, your time. I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and I know our audience will too. So thank you so much for taking the
No, of
time to be
course.
here.
I mean, thank you for like bringing me on and having me relive all these really great moments in my career that I don't think about for a lot of the time. So it's been really great reliving those moments. So thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.